Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another special guest. Daniel, thanks for joining me, and feel free to give yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I really appreciate the invitation to come on and chat. I've listened to a few of your episodes, some really interesting guests so far. Thanks for the invite. For the listeners, my name is Dan Locke. I'm the Director of Player Development at Columbus Crew. I've been here for just over 18 months now at the club. I've been involved in MLS for a number of years now, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit. Again, thanks for the opportunity, Chad, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we'll get things started with that funny accent. It can't be Columbus accent, I'll tell you that much. Let's get things started with the early days. How'd you get into football, and then we'll slowly work our way through your career.
Yeah. So I'm, as you've noted, I'm not from Columbus. No, I'm from Sheffield, England, Northern England. And really I would probably call it an obsession for soccer, for football. Started there as early as I can remember, kicking a ball around with my dad. My dad was a soccer player. He was a goalkeeper, a pretty good amateur level, and a big Sheffield United fan. So he passed that on to me, being a season ticket holder from the age of 6, going to Bramall Lane, watching the Sheffield United games every weekend, and then on a Saturday and on a Sunday going to sit behind my dad's goal, watching him be a goalkeeper for his men's team. So life's just been football since as soon as I can remember. It's some of my earliest memories, and I think one of my favourite ones was being in the stadium for the first ever Premier League goal that was scored when Sheffield United beat Manchester United 2-1. It's probably our few claims to fame, but I'll take it. So I just grew from there and loved playing, loved being around the game, and just obsessed with it.
And then in terms of your playing career, how far did you make it? We'll get into that.
Yeah, like probably a lot of coaches who started at a young age is the reason why we started at a young age. We weren't good enough to make it. So I played for a good. We had a really good local team. We had some really good players. Actually, we had Gary Cahill. I don't know if you remember him. He was part of our under 13s, under 14s, under 12s when we were growing up in our area, and he moved on to real big things. So we had some good players at that team. And then around under 15, I made the move and joined. As much as I'm going to hate saying this, I actually joined a development team for Sheffield Wednesday. So that broke my dad's heart a little bit. So I had to put on the blue and white, unfortunately. And that was very much almost like a B team to their academy team, and we would train at their training facility, play against kind of your regional opponents and some kind of lower level in terms of the English Pyramid academy teams as well as local teams. And it really was a mechanism for the pro clubs in the area to cast a wider net. And so I had 2 good years with that, under 15, under 16, but I'll be honest, wasn't good enough to make that jump full time and into the full time academy from under 16 onwards. So continue to play locally with kind of under 16 in England. You can actually leave school and go to a community college to specialise. So that at 16, I kind of went to a local community college in Sheffield. Also played in that team. That had some pretty competitive players. And then at the age of 18, so making that decision, do you still try and kind of pursue at a lower level, or do you go and pursue education? So that's when I decided at 18 to go off to college. Went to Liverpool, John Moores University there to really start embarking on coaching and education.
Yeah, so that's actually the next question. On the education side, I know you've had quite an extensive education in terms of you started with the community college, then you went to college there in Liverpool as well. What is it like? Can you get into kind of your degree and what you actually did, but how it's now used in a day-to-day basis, or even throughout your career? How have you been able to use those learnings now?
Yeah, Liverpool John Moores at the time, and still is one of, at the time in the early 2000s. I went there in 2003. It was really a pioneer for a lot of the sports science, and it was the first ever university that had a specific soccer science degree and a coaching science degree. So I actually did the sports science one because I wasn't quite sure which field I wanted to go in. So I wanted to learn a little bit about everything. So I did sports science, and then you kind of towards the end of your degree, you can specialize in one topic. So I specialized in sport development. During that process, started my coaching licenses. So I'd already got my kind of level 1 FA, which is equivalent to like a D license when I was 17. So then I got my C license, equivalent of C license when I was in university at John Moores. And we covered everything from sports psychology, physiology, biomechanics, periodization. We had lecturers on our course what were working in Premier League clubs at the time. So we had, I think, the performance coach from Middlesbrough, the nutritionist from Everton, the sports psychologist from Liverpool. So it was really cool to get real exposure to the top level, and we were very lucky to have those lecturers in the college. So that really sparked my interest in working in the pro game if I could, and I really enjoyed that component of it. And then from that, I was also coaching on the side locally. So it really, from 18 onwards, I've been coaching at different levels. But I would say now you think on a daily basis, when I'm having to have conversations with a performance coach or a coach or even a head of education or a nutritionist. So just having a basic, decent knowledge level of all those different fields definitely helps when it comes to working in a club where you've got to collaborate across multidisciplinary departments and at least have a base knowledge of the different areas. So it helps you make better decisions, and you're better informed when the experts are talking to you and giving you recommendations.
And then some of the more general learnings like work ethic, things like that. Did you have some of those experiences in college?
Yeah, it's always, as a student, sometimes you live in a bit of an easier life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had to, you work your way through college, so you have to earn money as well. So I worked in a bar in Liverpool, which is entertaining. If you've ever been to Liverpool, it'll keep you on your toes. So I worked in a bar, I coached, did my studies. So yeah, just that innate work ethic is always going to be there to earn some money to get through college, to keep up with your classes. But there's some really, really cool, experiences. I'm getting a train from Liverpool to the Wirral and Birkenhead. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tranmere Rovers. That's where they play on the other side of the river. So you have to go over there, an hour on the train, coach for 2 hours, get an hour train back. So it's all those little experiences that make you grateful for kind of your journey and where you end up getting to.
And then post-education, getting into your career, you made the jump to the US, which is uncommon for most Brits, especially working in football. You would think you're staying in the country where football is the number one priority. What were some of those early steps where you just decided maybe the US is an option for you?
It was actually it's funny, I remember being about 14 or 15, and my dad, I don't know if I mentioned this at the start, but my dad was also a coach as well for a short while when I was a younger kid. And I remember being 14 or 15, and we used to get these magazines back then when you had magazines. 442 magazine, you ever seen that one? Brilliant, right? And in the back of 442, they always had ads, like classified ads. And there was also always ads in there to come over to the States to coach. And you could get like a summer visa. I remember even at 15 saying to my dad, "Oh, I'd love to do that when I'm older." And then I had a really good PE teacher at school who had done it, and he kind of inspired me to do it. And then when we were in the last year at John Moores, we had a company called UK Elite Soccer come out and kind of give a talk on opportunities to come out to the States to coach. So immediately after I graduated college, I think I finished college in the June and jumped straight on a plane in the July to come out to the States for like a 4-month visa to coach on soccer camps, residential camps, coach teams from the summer through to the end of the fall in New Jersey. And it was brilliant. It was incredible experience, just coaching every single day, the amount of hours on the field. It was a real good grounding. You're working with every age from good level premier high school teams ages to working with 5-year-olds, so talk about an education in coaching. And so that was kind of how I came out to the States. And then through that, I really enjoyed it. Looking at the opportunity to go back to England, actually, they probably at the time then there weren't many. You couldn't do it as a full-time job. You'd have to do a job at 9 to 5 and then coach on the side. Where opportunity to come out to live in the States and you're just coaching full-time every single day. That's your job, and it was felt like a dream. So why not? So then got a full-time visa, and then it just went from there. It was never really. It just kind of happened, really. And then one thing led to another. Then you got a full-time job, and was fortunate to be doing that for a living.
And then, yeah, let's get into the kind of that next stage of your career. So you started coaching with the camps, then you get your next visa. What were some of those next positions like that you were working in leading up to working with MLS clubs?
Yeah, so then through UKLE, I kind of moved over to Seattle in Washington, where I was kind of became a full-time manager for the company in that area, and then eventually took over to become the regional manager for Washington and the Pacific Northwest. And that kind of entailed then, basically, I was also working as director of coaching in a club in the Seattle area. So I coached teams, I was director of coaching. Then I was also running the UK Elite side of things in terms of the camps and the staff. So managing upward of 50 staff. So you kind of then get an experience of being a director of coaching. You're also coaching 2 teams. You're also managing people. There's a lot of work. But again, incredible experiences, learning experience, what I'm still use today in my current role. I also then coached for 2 years in a community college, Bellevue Community College, with a women's program. Again, completely different experience in terms of working with older players in a collegiate setting. And then also started taking up some coach education roles with what was back then the NSCAA. So I was able to do some grassroots coaching courses. And that's always been a big passion of mine, coach education. Really, that came from UKLE because they had such a good process with that in terms of encouraging that. And then through that was then kind of fortunate enough to get a connection with Seattle Sounders, just volunteered to go down once a week or once every couple of weeks to watch trainings. And then that led to a little bit of scouting, and that led to helping out with a few ID events. And then a job came up at the Seattle Sounders, and applied for that and then got that position.
Yeah, so you had I believe it was the U15 Academy head coach, and then you were also the head of affiliates and club partnerships. So what was it like kind of balancing those 2 roles at the same? I'm sure you were used to it in a little bit because you've kind of done that already throughout your career, but what was it like balancing those roles, and what were some of the unique experiences there?
Yeah, you're right. Being able to having the experiences at a young age and balancing multiple things definitely helped. So I was even from the days at college where you're juggling different jobs and your studies and playing and all that stuff. So it was really good. And my initial role at the Sounders was actually working with the under-13s and under-14s and being an assistant coach, but then also running their under-8s and under-12s programming at their partner club, Seattle United. So I had the time split 50-50, which was really, really good because I was then coaching in a given week under-8s, all the way from under-8s through to under-17s. And you're working with the local club, but then you're also working with the top academy players under-17. So it taught me a lot in terms of, and you have to get a good knowledge of what the different ages and stages of development, curriculum development, because then through the affiliate, being in charge of the affiliates as well, we created a curriculum for under-8s to under-12s that we shared with all our affiliate clubs. And then I would say from a coaching perspective, is we're getting a real understanding for what it takes for players to progress through a pathway to go from being in an affiliate club to then part-time academy programming to full-time to then under-17, under-16, pushing those kids then into the second team and potentially a first team. So you learn a lot about the different facets of player development. And again, it was just a real 4 years of mass amount of education, on the job education and learning, which was definitely also enabled by working with some really top people in the industry, in terms of the likes of Chris Little, who was at Sounders at the time. He's now the assistant coach at Colorado Rapids. Mark Nichols, who's Columbus Crew technical director, and some really good coaches at Sounders. A couple of guys, Brayton Knapp, Michael Morris. We had Gary Lewis there for a little while. Gary's now the academy director at Chicago Fire. So just a perfect storm of being fortunate to work with some top minds, top people, and learn a lot from those guys.
And I think it definitely shows how that all experience has led to where you are now, where you've really been able to sit down and you can probably see the 7-8-year-old that's just sort of getting into the club environment all the way to being a first team player. You've kind of had that whole spectrum right across the board. And we'll get into So then you move to Charlotte. So you're the
Mhm.
academy manager there, and it's a unique position because you're actually building out the academy. There wasn't anything there beforehand.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, because that is a crazy unique experience compared to how other academy managers already have at least something there to start with.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, it was one of those where an opportunity comes along and you think, well, is this going to come along again? It might never come along again. It's something you should really pursue and give it a go. So, and the uniqueness of it being a brand new franchise and essentially a startup. So, what was then added into the craziness of it was COVID.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
I
made the move
forgot. I
there.
forgot.
Yeah. So I made the move there. I think it was March 1st, 2020, and you're all excited to start recruiting and start this academy. Within 2 weeks, COVID hits, and then the USDA scrapped the league, and you're in lockdown for however long. So then we had no games to watch because the league was shut down. Our first team then got pushed back a year, and so you're suddenly thinking, well, we don't have a name, we don't have a logo, we don't have a we don't have a league to watch, we don't have anything. So it was a real unique experience. So basically, we just spent 3 months of video scouting. I was one of 5 employees at the time at the club. We were literally just 5 of us. And so we video scouted hours upon hours of every under 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 game we could get our hands on from the DA. And we started building out these 2 rosters to start our academy teams. And then by July, we finally the club launched the Charlotte FC name and brand, and the excitement really started picking up. And then by the end of July, after we got through all that, we got the green light with all the COVID rules to start training. So we kicked off our academy on time, on the date we planned to do it.
Wow.
And which was funny is the Friday we something like we started on the Monday. The Friday before, we got a call saying all our uniforms were delayed another week. So we were like, oh my God. So we had to scrap together these quick T-shirts in the space of a weekend so the kids could have something to train in. So it was just a unique experience that I'd probably never go through again. And then we started that in July, and we were able to put together competitive teams. It was really cool. And it culminated in that October, we were able to get 2 academy games in Bank of America Stadium against Atlanta United. We got the go-ahead to open it up to the public, so we had over 2,000 fans there, and they were the first teams in Charlotte FC uniform to ever play in Bank of America Stadium. It was a really unique, incredible experience for the kids, the families, the fans, and play against an established MLS academy. The under-17s won, so again, it was the first ever Charlotte FC winning in that stadium.
Wow, yeah.
Those kids were part of history. So in the space of 6 months to go from that, what happened in that March, to then get to the October and have that moment, it was pretty cool. And then the teams went on, did well that season. The 17s made it to the last 16 in the playoffs. And then we were able to build the academy more the following year and add an extra team. And at that point, the first team started. So it was a wild couple of years. It was cool. It was a wonderful experience, yeah.
And then before we get into the Columbus side of things now and what you're doing, what was it like kind of, you've now not only come across from England, but now you've actually been able to not only visit, but live in many different places in the US. What is that experience like, kind of getting new opportunities in different cultures, even within the US?
Well, as a young age, I'd always wanted to travel. It's always been a bug, and as soon as I could travel, I wanted to. So really coming over to the States to coach was kind of combining my interest of travel, but also football. So getting to kind of combine both. So then just the experience of being able to live in different states has been cool, because, it's a continent, right? The US is unbelievable in terms of how each state can differ slightly, whether that's by demographic, culturally, politically. So I just think being able to live in New Jersey, or then go and live in Maryland, or spend 12 years in Seattle, which is really quite unique because it's kind of cut off. It's up in the corner of the country.
Yeah, almost in Canada at that point.
Yeah, it's like Canadian influence, and you've got a large kind of Asian population, and then you've got the mountains. So it kind of really cuts it off. Which is, and if you've never been to Seattle, I'll definitely recommend it. It's a really interesting city. And then to go from there to move to North Carolina, which is completely different in terms of makeup and diversity and history. Obviously, it's a lot older, that part of the country. So just always had an interest in the different historical elements of the US and just the different amount of nationalities here. It's I love it. It's fascinating. You look at our academy teams, and we've probably got anywhere between 10 and 15 different nationalities, whether, in terms of like second generation or first generation. And then on our staff as well, we've got British staff, Colombian, Mexican, Brazilian, Iranian. I think it's so important to have that mix of nationalities, whether it's with your players or with your staff, and that just represents what this country is all about.
Definitely. No, I couldn't agree more on that end. It's like a United Nations within a nation. We'll get into your work now. So you're with Columbus Crew, you're the director of player development. For those who don't know, what does that actually mean, and what are your day-to-day kind of positions look like there?
Yeah, so it's it's essentially an academy director, but the reason the title's a little bit different is mainly about the connection and the pathway through to the second team and first team. So I'm involved a lot with the second team as well, and really overseeing the progression and pathway for all of our emerging talents and players to progress through from the academy to the first team. So oversee all of the daily workings of the academy, the staff, and then involved in a lot of behind the work kind of meetings and planning regarding the pathway. And then and connection through all the way through to the first team.
And we really like to get an idea for those who are aspiring to, they might be listening to this episode and they might get an idea of, this is something I might want to pursue. So in terms of actually achieving and getting to that position, how did that become available? Were you still at Charlotte, or did you have a break in between? How did that work out?
No, I came from Charlotte to here. What was interesting is a role came up here to be head of individual development and head of coaching for the second team, for Crew 2 in the academy. So it was quite a unique role. And I'd already previously worked with Mark Nichols, who was here as a technical director, and also knew Kelvin Jones, who was the current academy director, and Gus Terran, one of the academy coaches. I was actually doing the EFCL French formation coaching license with Kelvin and Gus. So there was a connection there. And the role really intrigued me in terms of individual development. It's something I've always been quite interested in and passionate about. And also the notion of it being a coaching role that worked across all the ages and into the second team as well. So the opportunity to work with the second team and really connect that pathway from academy to the first team. And then Columbus at the time were going through a lot of really cool changes. They just opened a new stadium. They'd opened a brand new training facility. They had really top experience in terms of senior leadership at the club. And it looked like a club. Well, whilst it's a very historic club, Columbus Crew, it looked from the outside, I was really modernising and ready to implement some really unique and forward-thinking ideas. So the opportunity came up, and sometimes in football that happens. You've been at a club for 2.5 or more years, and sometimes you might feel like you need something different, or you need a different challenge, or you want a different challenge, or sometimes things just align in a different way. So it came up, and I thought, why not? It's something new. I've never been to Columbus, so let's experience it. Let's give it a go. And then took that role, and for a year did that role and learned a lot before progressing into the role I'm in right now.
And so you mentioned a lot of the upgrades, and one of the newest ones is a new trophy in your cabinet. So you guys are obviously MLS Cup champions. What was that last year like? I'm sure it was a roller coaster of emotions throughout the year, but what were some of the key strategies and initiatives from your point of view that you were able to instill not only in the academy, because a lot of those kids had now come up into the second team and into the first team. So what were some of those key points for this last season?
So I think as a club, one of the big areas of success would be the alignment from top to bottom. the club had, I would say, probably over the course of 12 to 18 months, really started shifting into this kind of notion of a one club vision, a one club methodology. Everything from style of play, methodology, language, concepts we want to teach, the collaboration between departments and teams. So that, I would say, that's been a big driver of the success the club have been able to achieve over the last year, from everything from first team to second team to the academy. So that's been a big part of it. So in terms of how they've got their success, I can kind of see from the outside, from the first team, always involved in it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say from them is that there's a real clarity in how they work. There's a real humility. There's a real process in how they implement their game model, their style of play, and there's a real openness as well in terms of what they share with the academy and the second team. And it truly is a collaboration in terms of what we've been able to do. And then some of the success of the second team was, I would say, that the head coach, Laurent Courtois, who's now actually moved to Montreal to be the head coach there, did a real wonderful job on developing individuals within a team. I learned a lot from him in terms of technical coaching, how he taught and developed two and three player relationships, which was really interesting, because if you're going to progress young players, I think sometimes people feel like, you put a young player on a second team and you forget to teach some of the important basics of technique and two and three player relationships, and some coaches might focus on bigger concepts. But Laurent had a real good ability to zoom into the smaller concepts, which still massively aid player development, and within that have a brave attacking style of play, which puts players out of their comfort zone and ultimately develops players. So he was able to do that in his 2 seasons with us and get a lot of success. Obviously, they won the championship in the first year with an older squad, but then last year really reduced the age of the squad overall, started integrating more academy players, and was still able to get to the final again, which was a wonderful byproduct of that. And then in the academy, it's just been a real, I'd say, from the leadership and downwards over probably a course of 2 years, is just more of an investment in the academy structure, the staff, the having better processes in place, investment in more staff, rethinking some of the programming by having full-time teams at under 15 and under 17 and part-time teams at under 13 and under 14, which enables us to be a little bit more fluid with recruitment. And then with our under 19s, changing that to play in the UPSL last year, which again helps prepare them better for this full season in time to maybe make a jump to the second team for this coming season.
And then in terms of from your position, you're always looking at, like you kind of mentioned, the academy, the second team, and then a little bit into the first team, and constantly that transition between them. You really have to look at the short term versus the long term success, and sometimes that means winning the MLS Cup like you guys did last year, but also you have to look at the products in terms of the actual players and their long term success. How do you find that balance between the two of aiming for championships and prizes like you did, but also the long-term building out of a club like you mentioned with the stadium and the academy and things like that?
I would say, again, I don't, some of those things was a decision to build a stadium. That's obviously not.
Yeah, obviously.
But from a soccer perspective, I would probably say, the first team's always going to be judged on results, right? But again, if you listen to our first team talk, they always come back to the process, and they place the importance on the process of what you're doing day to day, and kind of trying to stay more in the moment. And if you have the right processes and the right people, then that's the byproduct of that is going to be really good results, which we saw last year. So it's looking at the stages. First team, obviously they're always going to want to try and win a championship, as they should. But then you've got to be grounded, and then I would say within the academy, it's knowing, really just mapping out the season and probably trying to look more kind of medium to long term in seeing at what points of the season do you want to try and be competitive? What parts of the season do you really need to push young players and play players up? And then as a collective, are we having discussions on, what's important for a specific player in his development? Is it to go to GA Cup? as an under-17, or is it better for him to go and play 2 second-team games, which we did last year? We had some players who didn't go to playoffs because they went and played with the second team instead, because we felt that was the most important thing for them and their individual development at the time. So ultimately, it's always going to, at the youth level and the developmental level, it's always going to probably come down to what's the most important for that specific individual player at that time for them. I would say if you can always make your decisions based on that, it helps just kind of simplify things and ground everybody a little bit, rather than trying to get too carried away with the bigger picture things in terms of winning or championships. And just also, I don't have a problem with winning. It's you're not going to develop players without being competitive,
right?
And you're not going to win without developing players. So it's hand in hand, but it's just not sacrificing your methods, not sacrificing a process, and not sacrificing an individual player's development just for the sake of winning.
I always like comparing the UK system in terms of footballing structure and the American. And for you were a little bit unique, where even growing up in the UK, you were able to play football kind of alongside getting an education in terms of community college. But realistically, most of the time, you're kind of just choosing between professional academy structure or just going to school and kind of retiring in a sense at a younger age. Mm-hmm. Where the US kind of allows you to have that balance where you can go and play D1, you can play at a high level still while getting an education.
Yeah.
In terms of the academy, how do you look at the different player pathways, where you have the pro pathway, you also have the college and the academy structure, and how do you find the balance between choosing the right path? You were sort of speaking on it a little bit there at the end, finding the right path for the player.
Yeah, again, it's going to have to be a conversation with that individual. What you'll probably start seeing now with MLS is probably a shift where players now realise they can sign a pro contract for a second team or a first team at 16 and 17 or 18 years of age, and they can still get an education. They can still get their degree and do their degree alongside their daily schedule with training in the morning, first team or second team games. And maybe a few years ago, players that opportunity wasn't there for players, but now with the emergence of MLS Next Pro teams and the investment MLS clubs are putting in young players, that's now a possibility. So I would probably say now over the next 5 to 10 years or so, looking forward, you'll see that become more and more common and more prevalent. Now, it's not to say that the college route isn't a good one for some players. What players just have to make that decision is, it's really, if you go that route, you're losing a lot of high level practice time, training time, pro level games to play that short and condensed season. And are you going to that? Are you going that route because you want to do it? You think it's the best thing for your soccer, or is it the best thing for your education? And if it's the best thing for their education, and that's what's important to them as an individual, then great, good for them. So I don't really have a straight answer to it. I probably just dodged your question a little bit, but I think players now, you'll see the emergence of more young players coming through in the league, and players being aware that they don't necessarily have to go to playing college to get a quality education. They can still do it whilst playing within a second team or a first team.
And on the education front, we were speaking a little bit before the call about you've become an educator, I guess you could say is the best way, a coaching educator with the federation. Can you get into that a little bit? You were in Arizona, and what drew you to doing that side of things, making kind of the educational front?
Yeah, it's, again, like I said at the start, it's something I've always been really passionate about in terms of coach education, because of just the experiences I personally had going through coaching badges and courses and meeting some really interesting people and mentors, and I just have a passion for learning. So after I finished the EFCL course with the French Federation, I kind of took a few months to think about what I wanted to do next, and got that itch for wanting to do another course. And it was actually through, I think, a conversation with Fred Lipka, who's the technical director of MLS, who ran the EFCL course. Fred mentioned something about, we need to continue to improve coach education in this country, and they're looking at trying to get more MLS coaches and people involved in MLS involved in the US soccer education courses. Is that something I'd be interested in doing, and kind of just plant that seed. So then I went away and applied for the coach educator course with US Soccer, and then through conversations with some of those guys, Didier Chambaron there at the federation, got involved with doing the A youth license this past cohort, this past year, as part of that course, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a real good experience. There's some really good people on the course. And it's just a nice way to I would say maybe give back a little bit in terms of sharing my own experiences. Hopefully that can help some younger coaches, and also a great way to further network and meet different people from different states and different clubs. And who knows, you might meet someone who may be your next hire. So you never know. So it's I think it's just a good way to continue to stay connected with different areas of the country and different clubs and different people.
We've spoken a lot about your many different experiences throughout your career, but even through your life. And I always like to say the soccer industry or the football industry is an industry of highs and lows. It's a crazy roller coaster, and I'm sure you have your own experiences in that. What were some of the biggest lows in your life, the biggest challenges that you've had throughout your career, and how have you been able to overcome them and now use them as a benefit for the rest of your career and your life?
Yeah, I try not to think of it like that. In terms of like a low, I would just say is, no matter whether you're working in sports or any industry or any part of life, there's going to be a challenge, and there's always going to be challenges. So do you see those challenges as a low, or do you see that challenge as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to tackle head on, to embrace it? So, there's been a multitude of things have come along and will come along, and it's just about how you approach it and your mindset. So whether that's things in your personal life or whether it's things in your professional life, I just try and see things more as a challenge to embrace and tackle head on. So I don't necessarily have a specific example for you as such, but what I would say is really, that's just kind of my mindset on it, and always try and look forward, really.
Definitely. No, it's good. Hey, if you have that mentality, then it almost benefits you throughout. I feel I'm similar in that sense, where I look at life in a very positive approach, and then you find the little things that do end up bothering you really don't bother you as much, and you can kind of keep moving, and it's less of a distraction.
Yeah, I think that, and it's just important, I would say, just for anyone working in this industry, you can't get too high, you can't get too low. You've got to stay pretty centered. Because it's such an emotional sport and an emotional industry, and it can be quite volatile at times. So I would say just the importance of trying to stay level and stay centered and calm as best you can. No, I'm not saying I do that all the time, and that's probably where some of those challenges come, where you learn from. Sometimes maybe you've reacted negatively to something where you think, I should have been more positive in that way, or you get too ahead of yourself and you get too carried away with something, and then before you know it, something's around the corner to knock you back down. So just stay really centered and as calm as possible.
And then if someone's listening now, and we mentioned this a little bit previously, where they're looking at your career path or what you're doing now, and they aspire to be in that same position, do you have advice for someone kind of following along in that journey?
Really, I would say things I've learned from recent coaching courses I've been on would be the ability to know yourself. That is really important, because everyone's an individual. And if you know yourself, then you know what advice is important for you and important for you to take on. If you have a good self-awareness, you know what your strengths are, and you know what areas you need to improve and develop. And also how you evolve as well as a person, because you can know yourself, but it shouldn't be to place yourself in a fixed bucket or a fixed mindset. It should be knowing yourself at a given time, where you know where you need to change and when you need to evolve. And then, so I would say that's the biggest important thing. And then the other thing would be is you have to have a real work ethic in this industry. You have to grind. You have to be willing to put the hours in at a young age to get all the different experiences and a wealth of experience. And then be patient. I see probably some younger coaches who are so eager to get to the top as quick as they can, but sometimes it might take you 5 or 10 years. So that's fine, but just enjoy the process and really make the most of where you are right now and your learning experiences, and just work really, really hard.
And if we look at your career and we go 5-10 years back, you're on the opposite side of the country doing in a different organization, doing kind of something completely different in a sense. And then now if we go 5 to 10 years in the future, where do you kind of see yourself in your career?
I have no idea. I don't, and I've never been really a person to set kind of 5 to 10 year plans. I don't particularly believe in it, because life can happen and life changes quickly. I would have never, if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, you'll be in Columbus doing what I'm doing, I would have never believed that. So I wouldn't want to kind of limit any opportunities in the future. And likewise, not get too carried away, and then potentially set yourself up for failure. So I just, again, I'm going to sound boring because I've just said it. I apologize. Just stay in the present, enjoy one season at a time, and my mindset is just to do as good of a job as I can in the job I'm doing in this year, work as hard as I can, and if that continues to lead to success and further exciting opportunities, then wonderful. And if in 5 or 10 years' time I'm still involved in professional football, I'll be very happy and I'll be very grateful that I'm still getting to do this for a living and be around talented young people and young players and being a part of that.
We were speaking earlier, Sheffield United was kind of the dream boyhood club. So would you say that was your boyhood club that you were to die for at that point?
100%. No other club. That's the only one.
Definitely. And we'll get there you go. That's fair enough. And we'll get into some of the quick fire questions. So the first one here obviously is your favorite club, so we know Sheffield United. And the second, your favorite quote or saying, just something that you live by on a day-to-day basis.
Kind of linked with some of the things I mentioned, I would say just the simple notion of taking things step by step. It's it's something my mum always has said to me. Don't get too carried away. Just step by step, take it steady. And I would say in times where challenging times, or especially times where you've got to make tough decisions, and you've got a hard decision to have to make within a club, or you've got a big problem to solve. I think just taking things step by step, and just knocking one thing off at a time, being calm, and trying to stick to that. I think that's really helped me. So I often refer back to that if I've got something to solve or a big job on my hands.
Step by step, nice and simple. I like it. You've traveled all around the world, and especially the U.S. We've spoken on that, but you're in Columbus now. So what are the top recommendations for Columbus in terms of food spots or whatever your favorite go-to spots are?
There's some really good food places in Columbus. I didn't realize that before I moved here. So I would say if you're going to come to Columbus, there's a wonderful area called German Village. Beautiful in terms of architecture and really historic, but there are some really, really good restaurants within German Village. You can't go wrong. And then if you like pizza, if you go to the short north, there's a great place called Paulie G's Pizza. So they were my two spots. Anywhere in the German Village and then Paulie G's Pizza.
German Village, I like that. I've never heard of that. Are you a reader? Do you like reading books? And do you have a favorite book at the moment?
Yeah, I do. I enjoy reading when I get time. I'd say, can I pick two? Is that possible?
Yeah, go for it.
So I go fiction and non-fiction. My favorite fictional book I read would be Count of Monte Cristo. If you've never read that, it's a big read, but it's incredible story. And then non-fiction is a really good book by a guy called Derren Brown called Happy. And it gets a lot into kind of like psychology, philosophy, kind of stoicism and kind of those kind of philosophies and stuff. So really interesting. That's a really interesting read if you like that. All kind right. Of.
Yeah, two I haven't heard of before, so I'll look into them. And the last one here, if you could sit down with one person, dead or alive, for a meal, who would it be and why?
Can I pick two again?
Go for it. We've had three. Three's the max. I think three's where we draw the line.
I'm gonna go. I would say my parents live in the UK. So I'm the only, I don't have any family in the States, and if I'm lucky, I get to see my parents once a year. So if I could sit down and have dinner with them, wonderful. I'd love to, on a more regular basis, and just catch up and enjoy that time with my parents. And then I would say from probably like a famous person or whatever, soccer player, it'd be Alex Ferguson. You know, just to hear a multitude of stories about his experience as a manager, man management, leadership, you know, everything he did in his career. I mean, incredible. So if that ever, I would love to be able to sit down with him.
I always commend those that say their family. I know we had another guest that said his wife, and I said, you win. Valentine's Day must have been a good one for him. I can't have it better than that. I appreciate you having me on, though. It was a really good chat. And if there's any last words you have, and then we can wrap things up. No,
just appreciate, Chad. You know, you're doing a great job with your podcast and what you're trying to do. So really good work. Keep it up. And then if you're ever in Columbus, then you know you're more than welcome to stop by and come and check out the club. And that's about it, really. You know, thanks a lot. Really enjoyed being able to chat to you and share some experiences. So hopefully it's helpful. And thanks a lot.
No, it's brilliant. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Chad.
Bye.